Hey everyone, this is Elenbaas from Nightlight Astrology. Today we're going to take a look at the Jupiter-Saturn square that is coming up in the month of June. This week we've taken a look at Jupiter's upcoming entrance into the sign of Cancer. We've looked at Saturn culminating in the sign of Pisces. When both planets shift signs at the end of this month for Saturn, the beginning of June for Jupiter, they are going to make an immediate square to one another. This is part of an ongoing series of squares that the two planets have made, although recently the squares were taking place in Gemini and Pisces. So some of this will be review of the Jupiter-Saturn square dynamic, but in particular, given the unique status of Saturn being in its fall, Jupiter being in its exaltation, Saturn being in the superior position within the aspect dynamic, there are, I think, some hidden images, some metaphors or ideas that come to mind with this that we may not think of right away, but when we spend a little bit more time reflecting on the dignities come to mind. So we're going to look at those today. And I hope that it will give us an interesting starting point to begin reflecting on this upcoming square. So before we get into it, remember to like and subscribe. If this is a part of your spiritual practice, listening to astrology content, then consider us a home for that practice. It really means a lot to us when you subscribe, helps our channel grow. You can find transcripts of any of these daily talks on the website, which is nightlightastrology.com. As you know, we are in enrollment season for our year 1 program. I will say more about that in a minute, but go to the events page, click on live talks. On May 15th is my next monthly webinar called Jupiter Exalted in Cancer, Entering the Sanctuary of the Goddess. This is going to be a deep dive into the archetypal meaning of Jupiter in Cancer that should prepare us nicely. And this is the most in-depth talk that I'll be giving on this particular archetypal dynamic. So check that out. It's May 15th, 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern. If you can't attend the live webinar, you get the recording later. The other thing, of course, is, again, the year 1 program. So go to courses page, click on year 1. You'll learn everything there is to know about the program on this course page. There's an FAQ section at the bottom you can check out. Registration at the bottom through the early bird payment plans or early bird sale price is available until May 15th. So be sure to check that out, take advantage of it. Our year 2 and horary programs also begin in June. If you're a current student enrolled in Nightlight programs, you may want to consider diving into one of our advanced programs that also start in June. In the meantime, the need-based tuition option is there for anyone who would like to study with us in the upcoming year 1 program, but needs a little help to do so. We know that people are in different financial situations. So if you need a little help, you can choose within a sliding scale if you pick the tuition assistance. We want to make sure that people who are on fixed or limited incomes, disability, or whatever the case might be, are not priced out of studying a sacred topic. At the end of today's video, you'll find that I've added an additional informational video that's every day during enrollment season, so that if you want to stick around and learn more about everything the program includes in depth, that will be there for you. All right, on that note, let's turn our attention to the real-time clock and take a look at this upcoming Jupiter-Saturn square. So first of all, we will notice that as of today, Thursday, May 8th, Jupiter is in the last decan, the last 10 degrees of Gemini at almost 23 degrees. And Saturn is about to enter that last anaretic degree of Pisces, which we covered in Horoscopes yesterday. Let's take this forward just a little bit. We'll see that it's about May 25th that Saturn moves into Aries. And that completes the first part of this configuration. The next part that we need is Jupiter to enter the sign of Cancer. Now that entrance happens around June 9th. Once the two planets are in these signs, Aries and Cancer, they are officially in the whole sign square. And this is the necessary condition for the aspect to take place. And so here we have it. I'll just eliminate everything from our view so we can isolate this. Now, if we go forward one day at a time, we're going to see that Jupiter enters the first degree of Cancer, and therefore the rays of the two planets connect starting about June 14th. If I take this forward another day, it's on June 15th that the two planets meet at about the exact same degree and minute. And then if we give them 3 degrees of separation, we'll see that they get to about 3 degrees apart by June 30th. So let's say, giving them the full range of the whole sign configuration and the application and separation, about June 9th to the 30th, we're in the space of a Jupiter-Saturn square. Now, I will do a separate video where we look back at the entirety of the Jupiter-Saturn square and its dynamic through Pisces and Gemini as well, so that we can track the whole thing and, kind of take note of the historical arc of their square, because that is important. We'll do horoscopes looking at the new whole sign house combinations of Jupiter and Cancer and Saturn and Aries. So all of that is coming. What I want to do today is briefly remind us of what Jupiter-Saturn squares are all about, A, and then B, there are some unique images and metaphors that come to mind when looking at this square, given the unique dignity status of Saturn in its fall in the sign of Aries, Jupiter in its exaltation in the sign of Cancer, the fact that Jupiter is going to be going through a synodic reset with the sun in proximity of the Jupiter-Saturn square. That is a hugely important detail that may go unnoticed or unaccounted for in delineations that astrologers are making. I'm not saying probably enough astrologers will see it, but there's a good chance that you'll get delineations that exclude that detail. It's very important to not be excluded. The other thing to note is that Saturn is in the superior position within the dynamic. So we're going to unpack all of that in part 2 of today's talk. So let's begin first and foremost by looking at again, just so we can see. The square is between Saturn in Aries and Jupiter in Cancer. The square in general has some meanings that have resonated throughout thousands of years of astrological tracking and history. And so let's first start with basic Jupiter-Saturn dynamics. First, let's refresh on the meaning of Jupiter. I recently read a book by Liz Green called By Jove on the astrological Jupiter. And as far as I know, it's a new book from her, but it's not new in the sense that she said many of the things that she says about Jupiter in other texts that she's written, and she has a huge library of texts. But if you don't know Jupiter very well, or if it's a planet that beyond words like expansion or bigness or exaggeration is confusing to you, then I highly recommend that book, because I think it's one of the clearest delineations of Jupiter that I've read, and it has a lot of depth and sophistication to it as well. Anyway, within the Jupiter-Saturn dynamic, Jupiter is the metaphorical planet of spring and birth and new beginnings and coherence and meaning and purpose and direction and order. Now, when we hear the word order, we can easily start to think of tyrannical forms of order or strictness or some kind of conservative death hold on like order, tradition, structure. It almost starts to feel Saturnian. That's important because the two planets, Jupiter and Saturn, in their dance together, their synodic cycle through their conjunction, squares, oppositions, reflect changes in structures and order. But what we miss is that a lot of that order traditionally was given to Jupiter, not just Saturn. Let's try to flesh that out a little bit. So Jupiter is a planet that represents a word that Liz Green used in her book that I really appreciated is teleology. It's sort of like saying, what is the end? Where is something taking us? What is the direction or purpose of something inherent in it? In the same way that an acorn has within it the eventual oak tree. It has a direction. It has a shape that is central to its destiny. It is a purpose that is sort of built into the acorn. And so Jupiter is that felt sense that the cosmos itself has a direction, has an order, has a meaning, has a destiny. Jupiter is what grants life a sense that there is meaning and order in the sense of things being meaningful on the level of how the cosmos is arranged, how the psyche is arranged, how destiny plays out, how life is experienced. So the institutions that are Jupiterian are going to be things like religions. Insofar as religion is a part of how we find, locate, and direct our lives with a sense of cosmic purpose, existential purpose, social purpose, religions can be very Jupiterian. Education can be very Jupiterian. Universities, colleges, trade schools, insofar as there is a sense of putting together an overarching understanding of a subject or a topic that has its place within the universe. University is, in a sense, an encapsulation of the ordering of the universe. We go and study it through things like physics or through things like psychology or whatever the case might be. So Jupiter has an association with universities and colleges and education and religion and philosophy. It also has a connection with government and leadership in government, insofar as those things are ideally supposed to represent order and a sense of organization, coherence, unity, meaning, purpose, etc. Jupiter can also be about just a felt sense of faith that my life has direction, that my life has purpose, an optimism about life. And that feeling we get sometimes, it can be very solar too, or Jupiterian, that I have a purpose, that I have a special or unique destiny that I'm here to find or follow. And when we hear the call, we say, I have a calling or something like that. It can be very Jupiterian. Not surprisingly, it can be very solar. And both Jupiter and the sun were associated with enlightenment, illumination, leaders that are supposed to ideally represent the meaningful arrangement and orderliness and the leadership of a well-balanced society, etc. So Jupiter is like that. And so when we say Jupiter is, abundant and expansive, and yes, those are also qualities of Jupiter, but philosophically, for ancients who practiced astrology, Jupiter Zeus was really the arrangement of a meaningful, ordered, coherent, unified cosmos. And how do we experience that as individuals? What is our connection with that? There's a big role that Jupiter plays in our natal charts in delineating our relationship to all of these principles philosophically. So now take Saturn, who is the planet of winter and death and old age and impermanence and decay, and the wisdom that comes from time and death and impermanence and decay. A lot of life's wisdom comes from witnessing change and impermanence, from suffering through seasons of hard work, discipline, duty, obligation, necessity, and finding freedom within the bounds or confines of a mortal body and a mortal life, an appreciation for life despite death. The wisdom of Saturn is profound. But so too is the connection with expiration, limits, decay, death, etc. Now, transitions from one era or age or system or structure of coherent meaning to another is therefore associated with Jupiter-Saturn dynamics. When we think about Saturn, we think about the planets. The planet Saturn rules the signs of winter and the sign exalted in Libra, where the darkness takes over. The Jupiter-ruled signs come when the light is returning or taking over, or in the beginning of summer when the light is exalted. So we're putting these metaphysical principles of light and dark in the material universe. One of the things that most basically represents are times of transition between one order or one life or one generation and another. So not surprisingly, Zeus and Kronos, or Zeus and Saturn, Jupiter and Saturn, have this age-old mythological struggle that is a father-son dynamic and a dynastic handing over of one era and age to another. And sometimes the old clings and will not let the new come up. So Jupiter-Saturn dynamics can have to do with stubborn resistance to change when new life, new meaning, new order, new philosophy, new religious things are emerging. I mean, it's not surprising right now that we have a Jupiter-Saturn past year in which we've seen major organizational shifts in the government, a major change in the Catholic Church with the Pope passing, and a new leadership coming in that way, right? So all of these things are so reflective of a year in which Jupiter and Saturn are square. But personally on this channel, the focus tends to be very personal. And so we want to look at this in terms of 5 basic things. Number 1 would be changes of purpose. When our purpose, our felt sense of destiny, and a sense of faith that we have, that we are here for specific reasons, for specific lessons, for specific vocations or relationships, when our felt sense of purpose changes, it goes through a changing of the guard. Jupiter-Saturn squares are common during these kinds of moments. So think about the Jupiter-Saturn square in June as reflecting an ongoing change of purpose, change of that felt sense of destiny. There are seasons of destiny where it feels and looks like it's going in one direction, and then it evolves and changes. The impermanence and the threshold crossing from one space to another is denoted by Jupiter's encounter with Saturn, who is a kind of gatekeeper. Saturn was the distant, most dimmest planet, sat at the edge of the visible cosmos, and was thought of as a gatekeeper beyond the numinous realm of the ideals, and the material world that roughly approximates those ideals in the dying faces of change and impermanence. So when Jupiter encounters Saturn, the worldly embodiments of order, coherence, faith, direction, purpose, meaning, philosophy, religion, government, justice, laws, all sorts of things go through shifts. So a change of purpose is how we might experience that personally. Now, changes of purpose happen so broadly and over such long periods of time that they can be a little hard to detect. So you have to think about this a little bit more deeply. For most of us, this will require a little deeper meditation. Number two is maybe more overt. It's maybe a conscious sense of changing philosophy or beliefs. My beliefs are notably different in one area of life or another. So that would be another appropriate thing to watch for with this upcoming square in June. Number three would be changes to institutions. You may belong to an institution, you may run one, or you may work within one, or you may participate in one somewhere. It would not be uncommon to see significant changes in how things are arranged or organized. Number four would be changes in leadership. Again, a lot of us live and breathe in places where there are hierarchies or organizational structures of leadership, and you may see changes within those, or your role within those may change, or how you lead may change, or who you look to for leadership may change. And then number five would be new or revised understandings. You know, as an astrologer, there are often periods where I get a new understanding of something and I feel very enhanced by that new understanding. Ooh, I've kind of graduated somehow in my path of learning. So when you deepen or your understanding shifts or changes, it gets wiser, more mature, more veteran, or what you thought you knew, you go, oh, that was kind of limited. Now I'm expanding my understanding because I came up against the limits of what I thought I knew, you know, or what I thought was true. Those kinds of shifts in perception, understanding, knowledge, wisdom, even skills and crafts with some broader sense of the ways in which you do things, changing or accommodating new understanding. So, this is just your reminder of Jupiter and Saturn's dynamic. Now, we're going to review that along the entirety of the Jupiter-Saturn cycle later. We're going to do horoscopes on the new whole sign houses for the square later. What I want to start with today is a careful look at the dignities of these two planets and the specifics of the square along the ancient doctrines of Hellenistic aspect theory. When we do that, I believe that there are 5 hidden images. And when I say hidden, I mean that they are not immediately apparent. If you think about it a little bit more and you look at it a little bit more deeply, these are images that sort of come forth. Now, to me, these are all, whoops. Okay, there we go. Now, to me, all of these images are like basically metaphors. So when I mention these images, some of them you may think that I'm making literal predictions. And the way that I think about these things, not so much in terms of literalness, although some of these could literally happen, but more as metaphorical. These images are suggestive in the same way that tarot card images rarely play out in some literal sense. You know, you get the 10 of cups. It's not like you literally stand underneath a rainbow with your family with cups arranged in the sky, but it's suggestive of something. So these images to me are just that. But before we do that, let us take a look at the real-time clock, and let's just, let's take a look at this aspect with a little bit more depth. So the first thing that we want to come to, and I'm just going to back this up so we get them on their June 15th, the day of the square. The first one is that when you are looking at planets, and obviously like horoscopes will take us into the house delineation and the topics of the house and all that good stuff. But in a vacuum, you want to consider the dignity of the planets. Saturn in the sign of Aries is in its depression or fall. Jupiter in Cancer is in the sign of its exaltation. The two are in a square. Squares are of the nature of Mars. And so the relationship between the two of these things, and every Jupiter-Saturn square basically works like this, involves cutting and separating. Meaningful divisions can occur when the two planets are square to one another. So, what would that mean? Meaningful divisions that drive a change of purpose, meaningful divisions or conflicts or confrontations that drive a change of philosophy or belief, meaningful divisions, separations, conflicts that drive changes within institutions, meaningful conflicts that drive changes in leadership or new or revised understandings. So now we can start working a little bit more specifically. Okay, the drive behind this revision or change of purpose, belief, etc., is coming from a Marsy kind of dynamic. There will be a certain pressure or clashing. Mars likes to cut and separate. So different kinds of divisions or strife or discord or competition or hostility or conflict could arise as this change of belief, etc., happens. So that's how you start reading it, right? And I hope this is like, I like to break it down like this because I think it's, if you're a student of astrology, it's super helpful to learn like this. How is the cooking done, you know? So now, within this dynamic, for ancient Hellenistic astrologers, within any aspect, you usually, with squares, sextiles, trines, you will get one planet that is in what is called the superior position. You can always tell by taking one of the planets, either one, and imagining that the planet is looking into the center of the wheel, like you're, like in this case, like let's say Saturn is a person standing in the ninth house, looking into the center of the wheel, facing into the center. Which direction does the aspect come off from? So if Saturn's looking into the center of the wheel, the aspect to Jupiter goes off to its right-hand side. So you can see if you're a person and you're Saturn, that ray that I'm directing to Jupiter in the diagram here goes to Saturn's right-hand side. A right-handed aspect was called superior. And what that means is very simple. It doesn't mean better. It just means that within any aspectual dynamic where there is a right and left-handed presence in the dynamic, and there always will be with the sextile, square, and trine, we have one of the two planets that will typically inflect itself upon the other more loudly. So in other words, you don't just read Jupiter-Saturn in a square as an equal push and pull. When one planet is in the superior position, it is as though the square is themed or toned by Saturn sort of more strongly asserting its nature, its agenda, its qualities onto Jupiter. So the square meaning is still there. Nothing is negated in terms of what we said about a Jupiter-Saturn square, but this square is sort of being cooked up by a pressure that the fallen Saturn in Aries is exerting on the exalted Jupiter in Cancer. So that gives us a slightly more refined way of looking at it. We can now say that these changes of purpose are coming from, remember, Jupiter is basically representing the new understanding. Saturn is representing the limit it comes up against that creates the need for transformation. So this is a fallen Saturn creating the change of purpose for Jupiter in Cancer. You could sort of look at it that way. This is a fallen Saturn that is pushing itself onto Jupiter in Cancer in order to create a change of philosophy or belief. This is a fallen Saturn in Aries sort of pressing its nature onto Jupiter in Cancer, creating changes in institution, changes in leadership, new or revised understandings. So you can see how much more nuanced it gets when you start reading Jupiter here in the sign of Cancer, who's exalted, but having to bring forth a new understanding, new order, new faith, new direction, new purpose because of the kind of conflict, this is a square, that a fallen Saturn is creating for it as the basis of the change. So that all of those little nuances become really significant in how we understand. Now, add to this that there is another really important thing happening to Jupiter at the exact same time. Here is the day of their square, and what I want you to notice is that Jupiter, although exalted, is under the beams of the sun combust. That means it's invisible, can't see it because of close proximity to the sun. So this is now an invisible exalted Jupiter who is about to go through a death. Remember, we talked about what it means when the king dies, right? We talked about Saturn is passing away. These videos that happen to go viral on my channel, they were about synodic resets. Well, here we have another one. We could easily make a video. Maybe I will get into it closer to the time. Jupiter is dying. The goddess is dying. Something like that. We'll see how many bajillion clicks we can get. I'm just playing. But look, here it is. There's the sun entering Cancer right about the summer solstice within a week of the Jupiter-Saturn square. And what happens? Right about June 24th into the 25th, Jupiter goes through its synodic reset. This is a very, very specific thing to be happening in the midst of a Saturn-Jupiter square. The reset of Jupiter is a kind of major death and rebirth for Jupiter that is not significantly different from the kind of rebirth implied by a Jupiter-Saturn square. They're different symbolic ways of saying the same thing. A very new kind of Jupiter, new understanding, direction, purpose, wisdom, philosophy, etc., is being born, and there is a kind of death and rebirth of understanding, purpose, philosophy, belief, paradigm, systems or structures of order, meaning, coherence, unity, all of which is being reset as this Jupiter in Cancer dies and is reborn. Now, the nice thing about Jupiter being in Cancer, it's in its own exaltation, so it is said to be protected in its own chariot. This means that the death implied by the synodic reset is it's not as difficult or as sort of ominous looking as it might be if Jupiter had no dignity to protect it from that process of combustion. When a planet is in its own sign or exaltation and going through the cazimi, the reset of the synodic cycle, it's said to be a little bit more effective in how it handles that transition, you could say. It's still a rebirthing moment, which does imply death and rebirth for Jupiter, but that moment is occurring within a much more protected, fertile, and let's say well-resourced place. Okay, so there's something here that to me is like a little silver lining, given the pressure that a fallen Saturn's also placing on Jupiter to change and transform at the same time. Now, based on all of that, I want to show you 5 hidden images that I think they come to mind meditating on all of that a little bit more deeply, at least for me. Here's the first one that I think is really compelling, and please do not take these literally. Take these as metaphorical images that may convey some kind of symbolic or archetypal meaning or resonance. Number 1 is the death and rebirth of the mother. Now, the mother can be a principle archetypally that has to do with how we nurture ourselves, how we how we take care of ourselves. It can be about literal mothers or grandmothers. It can be about parenting. It can be about any way in which we think about the mother archetype and its role or place in our lives. And here, what I think we might be witnessing is circumstances that drive a redefining, repurposing, revisioning, reorganizing, or refining of the mother principle or archetype, such that it is felt or could be described as a kind of death and rebirth of the mother. So I hope that makes sense and conveys easily. Number 2 would be a family feud. Now, this could be a family feud that leads to healing. It could be a family feud that leads to divisions, departures, endings of relationships, and the constitution of a new order or sense of what your family is, or who are not your family members. Civil discord, civil strife, even the image of civil war felt a little too, I guess, intense for me. But family feud is, I think, close, like Hatfields versus McCoys. A family feud comes to mind because you have Saturn in Aries in a square, providing a reconstituting of Jupiter in Cancer. To me, that could mean that meaningful family conflicts, or even going back to the death and rebirth of the mother, deaths or endings within family units or family-like spheres of life could occur. One way this may happen is for divisions to appear within closely knit communities, groups, cultures, even groups or organizations that are supposed to represent something coherent and bonded. So family can be metaphorical, But the idea would be that there are really sharp divisions taking place within like bonded sort of little nuclear spaces, like a family, like a home, like a neighborhood or community or a culture. So watch for that kind of division or feuding or conflict to drive reform or changes, because that would be a very appropriate but somewhat subtle part of the dynamic once we read the dignities and the superiority of Saturn and so forth, and the synodic reset of Jupiter. Number 3 would be a hidden or secret birth. Now remember, Jupiter is being reborn. So there is implied here through the synodic reset of Jupiter plus the Saturn squared Jupiter, a rebirthing of Jupiter, meaning a rebirthing of meaning, purpose, order, et cetera, et cetera. I think to the Christian mythology of the birth of Jesus, or even the birth of Moses, in going back to the Old Testament, stories in which there is some danger to the thing that is being born. A king that feels threatened by the birth of Jesus wants to kill him in the biblical story with Herod. We want to make sure that Moses doesn't get killed, and so he's put into a little basket down the river and is adopted and brought into the Pharaoh's court and all that stuff. What was the Prince of Egypt? I remember that movie coming out. It was like an animated version of the story when I was a kid, I think, or maybe I was in college. I don't even remember. Anyway, you get the idea, though, that something is being born that has that sweet, promising, uplifting quality. A redeemer, a prophet, a leader, a chosen one, a special something is being born, but it is taking place under threat. Something is threatening it. Saturn in the superior position in its fall might be King Herod, that is threatening the birth of something new and remarkably vulnerable but promising. And so what is being born in hidden or secret? What is the thing being born that's so full of promise and life? Jupiter exalted in Cancer, with the sun conjoining, protected in its chariot, feels like we're protecting something that's hidden and being born, but there's a threat, right? You can feel it. It's really, I think, a fascinating way of thinking about what might be coming. I think this is why I like doing episodes like this, because if you just sit with some of these dynamics a little bit more and think about them, I think that's where some of the most unique images and delineations come from. A family curse, maybe it's being broken. Now, the reason I like this is because, again, you're looking at the resetting of Jupiter in Cancer. So there's some new promise that's coming forth in a space that resembles family. With the superior square from Saturn, is that a new birth that could be thought of as a new promise that breaks a family curse, that breaks a family karma? Could this be a time where a lineage is being healed, or a pattern from the past is being broken, a curse is being lifted, so to speak? Maybe it has ancestral, some ancestral weight or like history behind it. Again, just a very specific, I think, kind of fun image to play with. If it doesn't feel applicable, don't go get freaked out by it, right? Number 5 is a fertile new beginning forged from loss or hardship. The reason this one comes to my mind is very simply because Jupiter resetting with the sun in Cancer, protected in its own chariot, feels like a very powerful, very fertile placement. Look back at the Jupiter in Cancer episode I did earlier this week. You'll see it's a very fertile placement, very creatively like rich and substantive and supportive and nourishing of life. So I love Jupiter in Cancer for very powerful new things being born, cultivated, nourished, developed. We devote ourselves to special things when Jupiter's in Cancer, I think. Saturn from the superior square in a Saturn-Jupiter square dynamic suggests to me that this very lush, sweet, innocent, vulnerable new beginning might be coming from a space of hardship or loss or deprivation or dealing with a fallen Saturn somehow. So just generally speaking, I think of very fortunate, powerful new beginnings that can come forth through some kind of conflict, loss, or difficulty that seems to tone or establish the new beginning. I think, for example, of miracle babies, the baby that is born through some kind of like really difficult threat to the mother or to the parents or to the family. Um, you know, children that have been born while the parents are fleeing a country, or again, kind of almost like the Jesus story or the Moses story. I think of things that persist despite the initial birth being clouded by hardships or obstacles. So I humbly present these to you as interesting and maybe somewhat more hidden images within the dynamic that we can consider. I hope that this was a helpful, useful talk today. As I always, I try to make sure that this is educational and interesting and personally relevant. We will do things like horoscopes, a review of all of the previous Jupiter-Saturn squares from Gemini and Pisces, all that good stuff. After I sign off, there is an informational video about the upcoming year 1 program. It starts June 22nd. Hope to see some of you in class there. Remember that there is need-based tuition for everything we do, so need a little help to make studying with us happen. Feel free to use that, and I hope you're having a great day. We'll see you again tomorrow. Bye. Hey everyone, thanks for sticking around. I'm excited to tell you about our upcoming program, Ancient Astrology for the Modern Mystic. It is our first year course in Hellenistic astrology that begins at the end of June. June 22nd is our starting date. I'm going to take you over to the course page to tell you more about the program and what you will learn while you are in it. So here we go over to the Nightlight Astrology website. You can find this at nightlightastrology.com. Click on the courses tab, go to the first year course. Now, this program is ideal for people who maybe have a little bit of background already in astrology. Maybe you've done some studying on your own independently, taken some courses or webinars and workshops, but you're looking to deepen your understanding of astrology. And maybe Hellenistic astrology in particular has been calling to you. I'll tell you more about what Hellenistic astrology is in a minute, but on the first year course page, you're going to find everything that the course includes. I want to make the structure of the course clear first. And then at the end, I'm going to tell you 5 reasons that I think anyone might have for studying astrology, and you can see if you check any of those boxes. First of all, there are 30 classes on the year. It's just a little under a year-long program with 30 webinars. Every webinar is 2 to 3 hours long, including a lively Q&A and conversational section after we finished our lesson for the day. Each of those lessons I lead personally through live webinars, so you can attend those live. If you want to follow along at your own pace in your own time on your own schedule, you can always look at the recordings and take those in. And I'm going to show you what the class page looks like so you can see how you can interact with the course as uniquely and creatively as you want to. But you can either attend the live webinars or listen to the recordings or audio or video. In between major units of study within those 30 classes, we have separate classes outside of the 30 classes that are essentially tutoring sessions led by our staff, our course directors. We have 3 of them for our first year program, 3 tutors that help me guide every single class you're in and lead study sessions, and are also staffing an interactive group forum discussion where you can ask questions, look at charts, practice what you're learning with all of your classmates and with tutors there to help you. They'll always answer questions within a business day. So it's a really well-staffed, well-structured program. In between those major units of study and the breakout sessions, we also have guest speakers that come in throughout the year that you get free access to. The recordings are archived for you in your class folders. So you're getting people within our curriculum. And you're also getting to visit with some astrologers who are outside of the Nightlight School, but we really admire their work, and so we bring them in. You also have a ton of bonus material. With every lesson, we have recommended quizzes, study guides, optional reading. And that allows people who are really, really, intense, deep, like studious types to go as far as you want to with the material, while other people who are maybe, content to take things in at, just kind of taking in the classes, that's there for you too. So you can kind of go as deeply as you want to. The class, as the year goes on, goes through major units of study in ancient Hellenistic astrology. So if you're not familiar with ancient Hellenistic astrology, this is the earliest form of horoscopic astrology. This is where the astrology that you've probably learned today comes from originally. And that makes some of its features unique. Like, for example, ancient astrologers utilized whole sign houses. We study why they used whole sign houses, how they used them, and we study uh, uh, the why behind really everything: houses, signs, planets, aspects, dignities, essential and accidental dignities, uh, delineation approaches. How do you read and predict within a natal chart? All of those theoretical areas of astrology, we not only learn how to do, but we learn the why behind it. And this is what I think people find most empowering about the course, is that ancient astrology really helps to give you the rationale for everything so that you have the insight available to go off script. What I mean by that is, like, let's say you're learning about a sign, Aries or Taurus or a Gemini, something like that. Ancient astrology won't just give you a list of the adjectives or keywords or descriptions of, say, a sign or a planet. It will give you an underlying philosophical explanation that then allows you to extrapolate from it the kinds of lists that you read in textbooks, which means you'll have an understanding of why everything on a list in a textbook is there in the first place. And you'll also have the insight and creativity available to add things to the list that are a part of your own unique intuition and contribution to astrology. And this is what ancient astrologers wanted students of astrology to learn: the why behind everything. So this is a class where, even though you're seeing things like planet signs, houses, dignities, aspects, and you're like, oh, I've already learned about those things. Not if you haven't studied Hellenistic astrology. I don't mean to sound condescending, but like, truly, most people's experience coming through this program is, wow, I had no idea all that I didn't know about the roots of everything that I've understood thus far about astrology. So it really is about digging into the philosophical core of why we do everything, and then you have greater intuitive and creative capacity as an astrological craftsman or craftswoman. So anyway, that's a brief explanation of why I think Hellenistic astrology is important. Not to mention that ancient astrology was really focused on our ability to accurately describe and predict things in the realm of karma, fate, and destiny, whereas modern astrology's hallmark and strength is psychological depth. And so when you put the two together in our program, which is why it's called Ancient Astrology for the Modern Mystic, I think you have something really special. So on that note, you can see everything that we cover here. So there's a video with some of our alumni you can watch. Everything is there on the page. Now, there are 5 reasons that I want to touch on briefly before I tell you about your payment options and need-based tuition. These are 5 reasons to study astrology that if you mark any of these boxes, especially if you mark several of them, then I think it's a good indication that you might be ideal for this program, might be an ideal fit. So the first one is, if you find that astrology has become a part of your daily, weekly, monthly, yearly spiritual practice, it is a part of how you lead an inner life, then there is nothing more empowering than deepening your connection to that language, because that puts you more in the driver's seat. It's always good to have astrologers that you rely on, teachers that you listen to, get a little objective perspective, especially when you're looking at your own chart through a reading. But there's really nothing more empowering than learning to speak the language at a deeper level for yourself. And if that calls to you, if you want to understand things and be able to speak more confidently and clearly about this sacred language that you love, and this is a great reason to take a structured program. Number 2 is that you feel called to read charts for people. And look, not everyone who takes our programs is on a professional track, but we have 4 years worth of professional training programs at Nightlight that will prepare you to read professionally for others if that's the path that you're on. Maybe you don't even know if you're on that path. That's fine too. Many people take our programs just for the sake of their own personal enrichment, and again, to be kind of more in the driver's seat with respect to your astrological journey. You have more of an understanding. You can be more confident in reading symbols and experiencing transits with your own understanding that you've cultivated. But sometimes people want to read for other people. This will definitely set you up to do that. We have a certification track where you can take exams at the end of every year. They're optional. You don't have to if you're not on that level of interest. Number 3, you have done a lot of self-study. You've heard things from here and there, but you're looking to bring it all together. It is overwhelming to study astrology on your own. So if you want organization, structure, and coherence, what you're getting in this program is going on 15 years of training astrologers, 15 years of developing curriculum that is has in mind the overwhelm that many people experience. And this program is structured year 1, year 2, year 3, however far you want to go with our curriculum, to give you an organized, structured, coherent way of understanding the history and language of astrology from both ancient times to modern times, in all of the vastness that the field includes. And also, as we go, we want to give you the confidence that you are a part now of an astrological lineage. Astrology has always been practitioner based. Coming through Nightlight, you are going to have the opportunity to feel aligned with a lineage. If you like my work, if you feel aligned with the way I speak the language, then this might be a good reason to come study with us. Now, if you're seeking the why behind things, if you're like, yeah, that's interesting, I get it, I understand, but why? Why signs? What's the difference between a sign and a house? Why do they ever come up with a sign and a house? What's the distinction philosophically? Why does Mars represent this? Why does Mars in this sign represent that? If you are someone who feels empowered by understanding the why behind things, you are going to love this program, because that's how I am as a teacher. That's how I am as a person. And that's what this program is really all about. Number 5, you are looking for astrological community. Look, I think Nightlight is unique in terms of the kind of warmth, acceptance, safety, and inclusiveness that our community includes intellectually, spiritually. We are really pride ourselves on being a peaceful kind of family. I'm a Cancer, right? So it's kind of a family-oriented environment. So anyway, I will end it there. If you check any of those boxes, you may want to consider studying with us. Now, I'm going to take you over to 2 things. I want to show you the dashboard. So here is the Thinkific page. You're going to join this. And on your dashboard, you're going to find any courses that you've enrolled in at Nightlight. And there are many, so you may end up in being involved in multiple courses. And you'll find that they're all there on your dashboard. Click on one of them and it will take you in. You're going to find that on the left-hand side, there's orientation instructions, course information, class links, and calendar, all the technical stuff you need to know when you join the course. And then you're going to find that when you go through the lessons, that the lesson includes the video, the audio, the slides, the transcripts, the Q&A box text if you couldn't make it live and see what people were talking about, flashcards, homework, a bonus PDF with all sorts of additional recommended reading, bonus videos, additional video links for bonus material. So every single time that you want to visit something within the course, everything is nicely organized. So you can see here, I'm going to pause this before it starts going, but you can embed the video right there. It's embedded and you can watch it. And then if you wanted to, you could also, right here, you could also download the video and watch it on your own device. And that's same for the audio as well. And then as you go, you'll see all of the lessons are laid out. The study sessions are also recorded if you can't make those live. So everything is nicely arranged on the website for you. And that makes it a course that if you wanted to take 3 years to accomplish, you could take 3 years to accomplish. If you want to take it for the sake of getting certified, you have the full year plus an additional year to take the exam. So, 2 years total that we give people if you're on a professional track. But most people complete the program in a year. And a lot of people, over 50% of our students, go on to our year 2 and then our year 3 and horary programs as well. Now, final thing I'm going to show you is right here. You're going to find here is the enrollment options at the bottom of the first year course page. Again, this is at nightlightastrology.com, and you're going to click on the first year course, go to the bottom. The early bird payment saves you several $100s off the cost of the course. That's available till May 15th. Early bird installment plan saves you on the installment plan, regular cost of the course. That's also only available until May 15th. And then need-based tuition. All of our programs include a need-based option where we give you a sliding scale and we say, you pick your monthly tuition number within this sliding scale, which is greatly reduced off the normal tuition price. That is for people who are on a fixed or limited income, receiving disabilities, single mom, whatever the case might be. We want to make sure that nobody's priced out of studying astrology. So you don't have to feel any shame. If that is you, if you need help, if you want to take this, but you need to make it work within a tight budget, we get it. Times are tough right now. We don't think people should be priced out of studying a sacred subject like astrology. So we've been offering need-based pricing for 15 years. Nightlight is a donation-based school. It started that way. We have a sliding scale, so it's kind of like donation. You get to choose your rate anyhow. So if that's something that will help you, please use it. Thank you for listening to this. I hope it gave you a really deep and comprehensive introduction to what the course is all about and why you might find it exciting to come study with us starting at the end of June. So any questions you have about the program as you're visiting the course, email us, info@nightlightastrology.com. We'll be glad to talk about anything that you have questions about. We are here and we have a wonderful staff of people at Nightlight who will be a part of your learning experience and are all glad to help you. All right, that's it. We'll see you again later. Bye.